and call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 12 of the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates. Before we start, I'd like to announce that there will be no meeting this coming Monday. That's Victoria Day, May 18th, but we will have a meeting next Friday. That's May 22nd from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. As well, our whips have gotten together and they have agreed upon a schedule for the following week. That's the week of May 25th. The next meeting on that week will start at 5 p.m. Eastern Time and last until 7 p.m. Eastern Time. An email was sent to all of you about that, but as you know, that is a change in the calendar. Our normal meetings on Mondays are from 2 to 4. This is from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. So I ask you to please make sure that you adjust your calendars accordingly. On Friday, May 29th, we will go back to our regular meeting times at 11 a.m. and that meeting will last from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, the committee has already chosen witnesses for the meetings of May 22nd and May 25th, but I would like to take 15 minutes at the end of this meeting to discuss future witnesses and overall committee business. Now, for the benefit of our witnesses who will be providing testimony today, I would ask, as I have to other witnesses in the past few meetings, that if you were to speak, or at least start speaking, in one official language, continue if possible, and conclude your remarks in the same official language rather than switching back between English and French. If you can continue in one of the two official languages only, that would be of great assistance to our interpreters. Similarly, during questions from committee members, if committee members start their questions in English, I would hope that you can have a response and conclude your remarks in English. So no switching back and forth. We've had, unfortunately, some very significant technical difficulties when speakers are trying to alternate between the two official languages. Colleagues, again, as has been normal, these last few meetings we're starting a little late. So therefore, I would like to suggest that once again, our round of questionings are 5 minutes in the opening round, 4 minutes in the secondary round, and then 2 minutes for the conclusion. Hopefully in that manner, we will be able to get through 2 complete rounds of questions before we break for committee business. And with those brief opening remarks, I would call upon Mr. Matthews to please deliver your opening statement.
Mr. Chair, point
Certainly,
of order.
Mrs. Block. Yes, Mrs. Block.
Mr. Chair, I thought we had agreed that if we received the opening statements in writing by either ministers or departmental officials, we could forego the reading of those statements, given that we are starting almost 15 minutes late and you have asked for 15 minutes at the end of the meeting. I am wondering if we could not follow through on that decision or that request that was made, I believe, by my colleague, Mr. Macaulay, to forego the 20 minutes reading of the statement that we've already received and have read.
Mr. Clerk, again, we've talked about this before, but I'd ask you to please make comment on that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the problems is that traditionally when this is done, what we've done is adopted a motion to append the speaking notes to the evidence. This is for the benefit of the reader who doesn't get the benefit of receiving the document. Unfortunately, the order adopted by the House on April 12th prohibits us from doing this. We can't consider that motion because the House significantly limited the motions that can be considered by the committee. I would assume that if the chair was to add, the only other option I could see is we could take the speaking notes and post them on the committee's website, at which point if the committee wants to, or if the chair instructs the witnesses, we could go straight to questions. However, it would be something that the reader would not have the benefit of being able to hear the comments of the witnesses before the questioning starts. It's at your discretion, Mr. Chair, as to how you wish to proceed with this, but the motion that we would normally do to append it to the evidence, it would appear to be that can't be considered by the committee under the current context.
Mr. Chair, I'm wondering if it's possible to defer that motion to a further date when that is more appropriate. Is it possible to receive it and have it moved at a future date to have it added to the official record?
Yeah, well, just a couple of things on this. Number one, in response to both Mrs. Block and our clerk's comments, the clerk is quite correct. We are restricted in what motions we can entertain and even adopt or vote upon. The motion to append the remarks is not in order and would not be admissible. However, perhaps we can find a happy compromise. And Mr. Matthews, I would ask if you could keep your comments as brief as possible. And also for our secondary witnesses, we would like to have as many questions coming from our committee members as possible. So even though you have been allotted 10 minutes, Mr. Matthews, I know we've asked ministers in the past to try and cut their remarks back from 10 to perhaps 5 or even less. I would ask that you attempt to do the same. And Mr. Matthews, with that, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was doing some quick editing as the discussion was happening, so I will aim for the 5 or less approach to allow the maximum time for questions. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning. Thank you for having us back here today to support the committee's continued study of the government's response to COVID-19 pandemic. With me, as usual, is Ms. Ariane Reza, our Assistant Deputy Minister of Procurement. And we're pleased to be here with our colleagues from the Public Health Agency of Canada. Our 2 organizations have been working very closely together during this crisis, with PSPC focusing on buying the personal protective equipment and medical supplies needed by healthcare professionals on the front lines. At our last appearance here on April 24th, we underscored the competitive, challenging environment for procurement on the global stage. And that environment is one we continue to operate in, although it has changed to a certain extent. It continues to be challenging. I will talk about our progress in a moment, but first let me speak to some of the challenges we continue to face. As this committee well knows, most of the supplies in the world that we are seeking are manufactured in China. And this does mean we continue to receive product from unfamiliar suppliers. Supply chains are strained, and there are significant logistical issues which we continue to work through. In China, on the ground, our supplies are steadily coming into our warehouse with more regularity, and we are seeing the same regularity with cargo flights coming in from Canada. In total, we are now up to 27 flights, and just rough order of magnitude, we're basically dealing with 1 flight a day is the essential rhythm we have hit right now. And we continue to build capacity on this front. In the last week, we have seen a surge of materials arrive in our warehouse in China. And to help with this surge, we had contracted with UPS for additional temporary logistical support on the ground in China with air cargo operations. This approach was instrumental in getting additional flights out of China during a very busy and difficult time. Recently, we have also tried out a second airport in China, and the initial flight from that second airport was successful. So it gives us an additional option going forward in terms of using another airport in addition to Shanghai. And Mr. Chair, we have also been working with the Public Health Agency of Canada on developing an overall logistics solution to deal with large international shipments arriving both by sea and air, as well as domestic shipments arriving by vehicle. On May the 4th, we sent out an invitation to suppliers to submit an expression of interest to help us in this endeavor. And that same day, we sent out a request for proposal for additional logistics supports at airports in China to increase our capacity in that supply chain. Mr. Chair, when you look at the volume of supplies coming in now, the vast majority have met Canadian requirements. However, as you know, we have had some issue with some products that did not meet agreed upon standards. Notably, we received an order of approximately 11 million KN95 masks from one supplier, and about 8 million of those masks did not meet the performance standards for the grade of that mask. We have since suspended all further shipments of these types of masks from that supplier. While many of these masks are fine for other uses, I want to reconfirm to this committee that none of these were distributed for medical use. As my colleagues from the Public Health Agency of Canada will tell you, only when products are deemed effective and safe are they distributed to the front lines. I should also touch, Mr. Chair, on what we're doing in terms of domestic procurement. Since we last met, our department has finalized a long-term agreement with Medicom of Pointe-Claire, Quebec for domestic production of 20 million N95 respirators and 24 million surgical masks a year over the next 10 years. A contract has been signed for 15 million face shields to be made by Sterling Industries out of Ontario, and we have a contract with Hewlett-Packard to make over 500,000 more. We have signed a new contract with Logistic Corp, Unicorp, a manufacturer out of Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu in Quebec, and they are supplying us with more than 11 million medical gowns. When it comes to testing for COVID-19, we have reached an agreement with a New Brunswick company, Lumen Ultra, to produce enough reagents, the critical chemical in testing, for about 500,000 tests per week right through March. These are just a few recent examples. Mr. Chair, in closing, this is a massive effort for the departments, and we continue to shift resources to meet the needs of procurement for our frontline healthcare workers. And we're mitigating the risks as best we can and learning lessons and making adjustments as we go. We are committed to continue to work with our colleagues from the Public Health Agency of Canada and all of our partners to secure the necessary supplies. I'll stop there, Mr. Chair, because I do note that you wanted us to wrap up quickly, so I'll leave it there and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, and I do appreciate your abbreviated version of your opening statement. We'll now go to Ms. Thornton, and I would ask if you could please follow the lead of Mr. Matthews and keep your remarks as brief as possible.
Thank you very much. And I would like to thank you, Mr. Chair, and committee members for inviting the Public Health Agency of Canada here today. My name is Sally Thornton. I'm the Vice President of the Health Security Infrastructure Branch at the agency. I hope I am joined by Eric Dagenet, who recently joined us from Innovation Science and Economic Development to lend a hand with the COVID response, as well as Stephen Gertschio, the Executive Director of the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. I understand today you've invited us here specifically to talk to Canada's National Emergency Strategic Stockpile, or as we call it, the NES, and the work we've been doing to procure personal protective equipment, or PPE, and make it available to provinces and territories. A bit of background on the NES. It's a bit of a misnomer, and it helps to understand its history. But as you know, public health, it's a shared responsibility of multiple levels of government. There is a clear federal rule, but a fundamental principle in emergency management is that provincial, territorial, and local governments are reasonably prepared for the most common emergencies. The NES is the federal government's health emergency stockpile. It plays two important roles. It provides a surge capacity to provinces and territories when their own resources have been exhausted, and it's the sole provider of certain assets required for public health emergencies. Think example of costly and rarely used vaccines or antidotes. It was created in 1952, initially in response to a threat of nuclear attack, and its stockpile was for civil defense purposes. It's changed over that time. Acquisitions have moved from beds and hospital units, blood donations, to a port where we support all the purchases for mass evacuations and respond to national disasters, things like kits for setting up reception centers for displaced individuals. Since 2001, as a result of terrorist attacks, SARS and H1N1, the role has changed to focus more on chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. We began to move away from beds and blankets, increased our holdings of antiviral medications and key treatments in response to viral outbreaks. The role of the NES in terms of procurement has also evolved, and it's got the potential for outsourcing, for purchasing, and for distributing. It's a clearinghouse, and it really set us well for response in this epidemic. But basically, the NES was structured to prepare for low probability, high impact events, for terrorist attacks and major national disasters, and arrange for a continued availability of pharmaceuticals, equipment, and medical supplies that are rare or difficult to obtain. It's a niche role in stockpiling certain rare, high-value assets. To respond to COVID, we actually mobilized the procurement abilities that we have in the NES, working with our provinces and territories, but also very closely with Public Service Procurement Canada and Health Canada to procure supplies primarily for front care healthline workers. So we've worked closely with a range of partners. We've ramped up our internal capacity, and we've been deploying NES equipment and supplies. I would like to confirm if my colleague Eric Dagenet is able to join. You can thumbs up, Eric, if I can. Okay, I would like to just hand it over to my colleague Eric Dagenet to provide you an overview of our PPE bulk procurement and distribution work in the context of the response for COVID-19.
And Mr. Dagenet, as in keeping with your predecessors who have made opening comments, if you could keep your comments as brief as possible, the chair would appreciate it.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'll endeavor to do that. So thank you to my colleague Sally Thornton for the overview. I'll just take a few moments here to outline the Public Health Agency's role in the Government of Canada's strategy. As COVID-19 cases began to spread outside of China, global demand for PPE and other medical supplies increased to unprecedented levels. And in response to that, the Public Health Agency initiated a dialogue with provinces and territories in January, analyzed existing stockpiles and assessed anticipated pressure. In March, Canada initiated a collective buying power, and so we went to international markets together with the provinces to source bulk procurement for PPE, medical supplies, and equipment. After that, it soon became clear that we needed to buy, transport, test, and deliver more PPE than we ever had before, and that a whole of government approach was needed to bolster the public health agency's existing expertise and efforts. This level of massive PPE procurement and distribution required innovative procurement from Public Services and Procurement Canada, and investment in Canadian domestic capacity, as led by Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. Also, companies such as Bauer, Canada Goose, Irving, and CAE have retooled to make everything from face shields to ventilators. I'd say we're also supported with expedited regulatory approvals facilitated by our colleagues at Health Canada. And we are also supported by a large-scale logistical expertise from the Canadian Armed Forces. And just at this moment, I do want to thank Colonel Poudrier and his team, who showed up here maybe 6 weeks ago, and they have been absolutely instrumental to our efforts on the logistics side. So thank you very much to Colonel Poudrier and his team. On that, I should mention that many public servants from across departments, including myself, have joined Public Health Agency to support the response during this pandemic. In terms of quality verification, this is you may have questions on this, so I'll maybe talk about it a bit. Public Health Agency has started to receive deliveries of domestic and international supplies, and the intense level of global competition means that we're engaged with new suppliers and manufacturers. This is the reality that other countries are facing. So as a result, as PPE arrives, and sometimes before it arrives, the Public Health Agency is conducting an assessment to confirm that it meets the specifications for healthcare settings for COVID-19 response. I mean, our top priority in these efforts is the health and safety of our frontline healthcare workers. So to that end, we, along with support from Health Canada and the National Research Council, undertake rigorous technical assessment to procure PPE that will meet the Government of Canada's technical specifications for healthcare settings. So upon receipt, the process for verification varies depending on the medical device. To verify for defects.
Mr. Desage,
at the NRC to ensure filtration efficiency.
Sir, could you keep, number one, could you try and keep your microphone closer to your mouth, and if you could wrap up your remarks as quickly as possible?
Okay, all right. So in terms of distribution, we've signed a contract with Amazon.
Unfortunately, I think we've lost his feed, Mr. Chair.
I see that. So we will
be back now.
I'm back now. So we've signed a contract with Amazon, which is providing us with access to its technology interface, and they're working with Canada Post and Purolator, who are both business partners of Amazon, and they're actually providing the facilitating the warehousing and delivery part of this. Look, in conclusion, Mr. Speaker, the results of the Government of Canada's strategy are showing promise. The demand remains high for frontline healthcare response. Public Health Agency of Canada will continue to prioritize these efforts, rapidly distributing quality supplies as they become available, and we continue to work with provinces and territories. This really is a collaborative approach. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Mrs. Block for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses for joining us today. My first questions are going to be for the Public Health Agency of Canada. I'm going to try and keep my questions short and straightforward, so I do hope that the answers will be the same, so that I can get in as many questions as possible. Have any of the 8 million plus defective or substandard masks made it into public circulation?
So the 8 million masks that did not meet the efficiency test are being used as face covering. They're not being distributed to the public. So far, they're being distributed internally to Government of Canada operations as face coverings clearly marked. They're still very good
Okay.
surgical masks.
Okay, thank you. The recall notice was issued on Monday, May 11th. When did the department actually know that these masks were defective?
The recall notice that Health Canada issued did not pertain to these masks.
Okay. So regarding Monday's recall notice, when were the medical device establishment licenses issued to the holders impacted by this recall? Between what dates?
I'm sorry, the Health Canada issues the medical device licenses. I would have to defer to them and endeavor to get back to you. It's not.
Do we not have
agency.
Public Health Agency of Canada witnesses on today?
We are the Public Health Agency of Canada, but Health Canada issues the actual
Health
medical
Canada.
devices. Yeah, but we can endeavor to get that to you.
Okay, if you endeavor to get that to me, Mr. Chair, I would appreciate it if we could get that information back by next week. I don't want it to be an open-ended request.
Well, the request has been noted, and it will be up to the Health Canada officials to respond as quickly as possible, but we'll certainly encourage them to do so.
Okay, so then you have no other information in regards to the medical device establishment licenses, is that correct?
Not in terms of we're not the entity that issues them, so the questions are better directed to Health Canada.
Okay, thank you very much. I would, I guess, like to ask a question. In one of the reports by the media, there was, I guess, an observation that when these masks were tested, they did not meet the risks outweighed the benefits. And so I'm wondering if you could answer for me, what are the acceptable risks when you determine that while a mask does not meet the standards, there are still benefits? Can you tell us what those acceptable risks are, and are they written down anywhere?
So the KN95s have to test, their efficiency has to be 95% or above, period. If it's not, we assess to see if they're used as surgical masks in other settings.
So what are the acceptable risks when you weigh the benefits versus the risks?
If you're talking about them being used as N95s, it's 95% efficiency is the threshold. We're not taking a risk. If it's not 95%, they're not being used as N95s.
So when you determine that they cannot be used as N95s, but that they can be used elsewhere, what are the acceptable risks that you weigh when you determine that they can be used elsewhere?
So if we decide to use these masks that failed the efficiency test at 95%, we look at the efficiency that they achieved. They're often achieving efficiencies of 70, 80, sometimes 90%, which in many cases is better than a surgical mask.
So do you have a metric? Do you have a metric that you use when determining an acceptable risk?
There's no written down metric at this point.
So it's subjective?
There's no written down metric at this point.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have?
You're completely out of time, so we'll go on to Mr. Jahari for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to welcome both officials from both departments, and thank you very much for the great work that you have been doing, given the challenges we are facing. Let me start with Madam Thornton and PHAC. Madam Thornton, you, in your opening remarks, you talked about how the agency has evolved and how has MESS has evolved over the past while and where the focus is. Referring to the PHAC mandate, two of the core mandate actually stood out for me. One was prevent and control infectious disease. The other one, prepare for and respond to public health emergencies. Can you quickly shed light on how do you monitor these infectious diseases that are being spread internationally as well as domestically at home?
Yes, thank you for that question. There are a range of monitoring techniques. We have a global public health information network. We also work very closely with our international partners in terms of identifying early signals of where something might be going awry, and then ongoing monitoring with a number of partners through the Global Health Security Initiative and the WHO.
I was hoping that you say that. Madam Thornton, when did actually COVID-19 show up on our radar?
The very first sort of ping was late December 31st, and it wasn't about a COVID-19, but it was about an unusual viral pneumonia in Wuhan.
Okay,
Yeah.
and how did your department go about probing into it and preparing other organizations such as NES? You were very clear, restating the same comment that you stated when you were meeting Committee of Health back in April 22nd, where you said that the NES plays two key roles. One is around surge of capacity, providing surge of capacity to provinces and territories. And another one, you specifically mentioned that NESS is the sole provider of certain assets. And then you're kind enough to explain how that asset model has changed. When did you get engaged? When did you get NESS engaged to start assessing whether the supplies that you have are sufficient to be able to meet our need in case a pandemic broke out?
Okay. So again, on that December 31st, January 1st, we had no idea where it was going to go, but we did know that this is how pandemics start, although it could easily not be a pandemic. Okay, so we frequently get those types of alerts. It was probably the end of January when we started to take a look at our own stockpiles. Within the federal government, the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile, we actually do not focus on PPE. And that wouldn't be a major element because we count on our provinces within their respective authorities to maintain their stockpiles as well. We did some small orders within our budget and mandate, starting, I guess, the end of January and February. And in February, started our actual collaboration, our early discussions with provinces and territories about what their stockpiles were. Again, still having no idea of what we might need at that point, but that's when the informal discussions started. The collaborative bulk procurement, and I should have the dates, I think that began, the discussion started in March, and I think the first order with the provinces and territories, or on behalf of them, went out the first or second week in March.
Yeah, great. So as you know, we are now talking about in a very methodic and very safe and evidence-based reopening the economy. So when I look at the stockpile, I look at what we need now, what we need as we are starting the economy, and also what we need when there are discussion around wave 2 and wave 3, and what we need in the future if there is a variation of this. Are we positioned, and how are we positioned well for all of these phases? And is there any watch out for us to consider?
I think we are beginning to position, and there are a couple of things. So first, with the Public Health Agency,
a brief answer is possible, Mrs. Thornton.
We are beginning that positioning. We're beginning to estimate what might be required, not just in the health sector, but working with government partners to look at the other areas. As economies open, there will be requirements for PPE much broader than the healthcare sector, and there has to be provision for that. Those discussions are underway.
In closing, I'm glad that you are considering other sectors than public health. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
Madame Vignola, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, hello. My first question will be for Ms. Thornton and Mr. Dagenet. I'd like to come back to the 1 million masks that were disposed of when the Regina warehouse was closed, because seriously, I just don't understand. I do understand that your role is to respond to provinces' demand when there is a demand. I worked in a lot of places where there were warehouses, and when we procured anything, we had to follow up on it. You know, when the things were procured, when the expiry date was, and we had to make sure everything was used up before the expiry date. Does your department, does the Government of Canada have a plan? And if so, how did 9 million masks fall under the radar of that plan?
Okay. First, we do life cycle inventory management. As products come in, we're very much aware of the expiry dates. In this instance, we're talking about the disposal of materials that were in our Regina warehouse. We wound up consolidating our warehouses pursuant to a study. Our goal is to make sure we can get distribution to anywhere in Canada within 24 hours. That has changed recently, so we did close some warehouses. As a result, in Regina, we wound up disposing of 2 million expired masks and about 440,000 expired gloves. Those had been purchased, the masks had been purchased in 2009. The actual expiry date from the manufacturer is 5 years. Prior to that, we often look to see if there is a need, a request for assistance, but usually by the time things are unused, it's because there is not a demand for it at that time. We actually waited 10 years before disposing of them. They would be well beyond what the manufacturer's warranty was, and we would have had to test them. Those were destroyed last summer. Yes.
Je comprends tout à fait.
I completely understand that, and that's why I specified that I understood that it was based on demand. But since there's a distribution plan, when you see that in 2008, well, we have this many million masks that are that will expire the next year, could an initiative be taken to offer them to private businesses or to the provinces to sell them? These are resources, money that's just thrown out, garbage.
They are resources, but we are very concerned with end user safety. So in these instances, we follow the directive, the Treasury Board directive on the disposal of surplus material. One of the first things we look, is there a need for it, other government departments or other levels of government? We have made donations. We cannot actually donate materials that are expiring though, because the WHO, for example, they will accept donations, but those items that are donated have to have 2 years still good on their manufacturer's liability. So at that point, after the decade, we disposed of them. But we do explore those options.
OK, je vais poser la question.
Okay, I'll ask my question a different way then. Does your organization have a plan to make sure that never again so many resources will be wasted? We're talking about money, yes, but also that's materials to create these supplies, and they're literally going into the garbage. Can we make sure? Can your organization make sure that it never again finds itself in a place where there are 1 or 5 million masks that will be so past their expiry date that nobody will be able to use them? Could the plan from now on include an initiative to provide these supplies before they're expired, not after, before?
We do have an inventory management cycle, but would we never dispose of something? No, we would dispose of things if they would put end users at risk. Our paramount consideration is the safety of those who receive our products and making sure that we can stand by whatever the guarantee is associated with them.
OK, donc la prévention.
All right, so prevention is not possible. That's what I'm understanding here. There can be no initiative taken before materials are expired. Great. Thanks.
Seconds.
Oh, donc,
well, thank you. This gives me a lot more information, and I'll cede the floor to the next person.
Go to Mr. Green for 5 minutes. Mr. Green.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. To Ms. Thornton, who identified in her opening remarks that the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile Supply evolved from 2003 SARS outbreak to 2009 H1N1, which necessitated its shift in its role. But then in a further comment said that it's the sole provider of certain assets that are required for rare public emergencies. Now, in 2008, a Senate committee concluded that the previous conservative government had underfunded and mismanaged our emergency stockpile. The report at the time was provocatively entitled, "The Emergency Preparedness in Canada, How the Fine Arts of Bafflegab and Procrastination Hobble the People Who'll Be Trying to Save You When Things Get Really Bad." I heard some of the answers to Ms. Vignola, but I'm unwilling to accept that 20% of what we have in terms of our surge demand, if I'm to understand that there have been 11 million N95 masks purchased to date, 20% of those were thrown out last year, and this was reported last month, and that it had passed the limit of 5 years for their use. So you were literally sitting on the stockpile. To Ms. Thornton, these are not just products. These are literally people's lives. So I'm wondering what is being done. I know, hindsight is 2020, but what is being done to ensure that certainly the policies and procedures in place that would have had that stockpile prepared and procured in Regina is replenished and redistributed in a meaningful way, looking forward to what's going to come and what will likely be the second wave of this.
If I may just repeat, we do actually have an inventory management system in place. It deals with the purchase, the expiration, and we look to find good use for product prior to expiration. If it is well after expiration, we would not distribute anything that might impose risk or cause risk to the end user. It's interesting though, on the NES and the role, think about it in terms of our overall budget and mandate, and the operational budget for the NES has been about $3 million a year. Compare that to some of the procurement that we are doing now, which is in billions, but also the incremental investments we've had in the NES over the last 10 years have been for very specific purposes, things like smallpox or Ebola vaccines. On a go-forward basis, I think that we are establishing a good process, not just for a national emergency strategic stockpile, but for a national system whereby we work with provinces and territories who ultimately are accountable for maintaining stockpiles within their respective jurisdictions, have greater transparency about what each party has, and burn rates.
I'm sorry, but I can't accept those answers. This is a national scandal. The fact that you're claiming that there's systems in place and yet these systems clearly have failed. What other warehouses have been shut down and what other products have been discarded? Because the only reason why we know about this is because of a guy with a waste bin company went down and took pictures. So I need to know what other warehouses have been shut down and how many other products have been discarded.
In 2012, we had 11 warehouses in 9 cities. After we did the transportation study, we actually adjusted that so that we could still meet our objective of delivering product anywhere in Canada within 24 hours. And we consolidated to 8 warehouses in 6 cities. So at that point, we've closed 3 warehouses. We don't disclose location. The materials that were destroyed or disposed of at Regina were 2 million expired masks, which had been purchased in 2009, well past the 5-year expiry date, and 440,000 expired gloves.
And what about the other facilities that you shut down? What had been discarded of those facilities?
Materials that were usable would have been transferred to the other, to our existing facilities that have maintained, and I do not have that information.
Ms. Thornton, if you're telling me today that you've used systems and principles in place that have resulted in discarding 2 million just in Regina, and that we've closed other warehouses, I'm only to assume that by the same logic of those decisions in those other locations, other critical PPEs have been discarded along with them. Would that not be a logical assumption?
Normally, we don't disclose what's in the warehouses. This one might are in our assets and supply.
I can share with you with 30 seconds left that I do have a motion that I put. It wasn't in order here, but I will be wanting to get to the bottom of this. When you speak of whole of government approaches, Ms. Thornton, I think it's important to note that this definitely needs to be a whole of government approach, because it does feel a lot like a continuation of 2008 with the mismanagement back in that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We will now go to our 4-minute round of questionings, starting with Mr. McCauley for 4 minutes.
Great, thank you, Chair. Mr. Matthews, we'll go over to you, please. The Medicon deal, was that a sole sourced contract, the one to purchase or make and purchase masks?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. And yes, it was a sole sourced contract.
Okay. Were there other companies involved or who had bid on this contract?
Well, Mr. Chair, because it was a sole source, it was not actually a bidding process. So Medicom
Okay.
was one that was
Is-
identified as being
great.
capable of making masks.
Who identified them, please?
So we would have worked with the Department of ISED to identify companies that might have the domestic capacity. And this is the approach on all domestic capacity, to identify potential companies. They would
But
do
they
the
don't have the
legwork.
domestic
And
capacity at future.
excuse me for interrupting. I'm really sorry, Mr. McCauley. Mr. Matthews, could you please keep your microphone closer to your mouth so the interpreters have a better chance of translating?
Will do, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Great. Is 3M involved in licensing the products in any way? Are you aware?
I'm not aware of their role on that, but my colleague, Ms. Reza, may have more to add on that front, but I believe the deal is just straight through Medicom.
Maybe you can send us a note, Ms. Reza, so we don't take any time. I'm wondering, is it true that a North America-based company offered to make masks in Canada and do so by the end of May, and yet we refused or did not engage with them?
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure which company the member is referring to, so I don't have knowledge of that one. But again, the
That's very strange. No, we'll move on.
No, but
Can you? No, let's move on. I have
finish
another question, please. Was yes or no? What is Deloitte's role, please, with PSPC in the purchasing? I've seen a mandate letter that they speak for PSPC in purchasing. I'm wondering quickly, what's their role?
The role is, there's a few things they are helping us with. PSPC is accountable for the actual contracting. Deloitte has been used to help us with reporting, number one. They have also taken on a role in helping vet potential companies and with on the ground in China. But at the end of the day, PSPC is responsible for, with our colleagues at PHAC, for decisions to
I have a
contract or
letter.
not to contract.
Yeah, I have a letter from PSPC. It says Deloitte is therefore allowed to speak on behalf of PSPC about its interest in the procurement process. Now, I want to follow up with that. Are we still in the process of procuring more masks for Canada?
We are absolutely still in the process of procuring more masks.
I have a set of emails from Deloitte as recently as last week saying there is still a buying suspension for masks. Why would Deloitte be telling potential suppliers of legitimate masks that there's a buying suspension while the government is procuring contaminated or substandard masks from Chinese suppliers?
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't have the email in front of me, but I think what might be important to understand here is what kind of mask they're referring to.
It was an N95 mask. It was an N95.
So we are still actively purchasing N95 masks, but
why
we
would
do some
Deloitte
vetting
acting
on
okay, why would Deloitte, which in their mandate letter from PSPC says they speak on behalf of PSPC, be telling potential suppliers that there is still a buying suspension? And I have a series of emails from Deloitte telling suppliers, and these are legitimate North American and European-based suppliers, not these shoddy ones, not these ones that you've commented on about difficulty from China. Why would we, the government, be telling these people there's a buying suspension?
Mr. Matthews, unfortunately, we're completely out of time, but I would appreciate if you could give a complete answer to Mr. McCauley's question in writing to our clerk as quickly as possible. Thank you. We will go on to Mr. Weiler for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will be splitting my time with MP May.
Mr. Weiler, I have a lot of difficulty in hearing your audio.
Can you hear me now? Mr. Chair, just so you know, I will be splitting my time with MP May, and I'll just jump right into it as long as you can hear me.
Please go ahead.
So I'd also like to thank officials for joining our call today. And I know the departments are working really hard in a very, very challenging situation in a very competitive environment. But this question is for PHAC. And I was wondering if you could tell us about how you are administering PPE and how PHAC is working with the provinces and territories to get these supplies out the door and into local hospitals.
Good question.
Thank you for the question. So the Public Health Agency of Canada works very closely with the provinces in identifying their PPE needs, their regular surveys of their stockpiles, as well as their what we call their burn rates. And we try to forecast when they are going to run out of specific types of PPE, so we know ahead of time. Once we receive the PPE, we do a thorough quality assessment to make sure that the PPE that we distribute to frontline workers is safe in the COVID setting. And then through our work with Canada Post and Purolator, we quickly expedite the PPE to the provincial distribution points. They in turn expedite the product to hospitals.
And how often are you sending shipments to provinces and territories?
On a quasi-daily basis.
Quasi-daily. And how does this compare to past experiences?
Maybe Sally, you can talk about past experiences.
Good question.
In the past, our deployments, we have had a couple a year, not many a day. And in terms of the volume, the magnitude, the dollar value, we are in a completely different world. It is exponentially greater than what we've experienced in the past.
Mr. Chair, just as a point of reference, a province recently told me this week that they were using in 2 weeks the number of gowns they normally use in a year.
Wow, it's incredible. Well, at this time, I'd be happy to transition to Ms. May.
Ms. May, you've got about 1 minute, 30 seconds.
Thanks. I wanted to get back to the questioning to Ms. Thornton, and thanks to all the witnesses for being here, and thanks for all the work you're doing in these extraordinary circumstances. But going back to the decisions to close so many warehouses that occurred back in 2012, was this associated with any budget cuts to the Public Health Agency of Canada? What drove a decision to shut down warehouses in locations that you're not able to disclose?
Yeah, it was not actually related to a specific budget cut, but we do look at ongoing optimization. Our goal in situating and where and how many warehouses we have, first it's driven by being able to reach all the communities in Canada within 24 hours. A lot had changed since our initial structure for those 9 cities, and just the transportation, the air, the rail, and the trucking changed. So we were able to have the same reach with facilities in 6 cities. Going down to warehouses was just dependent on how much space we needed, where they were, but no, it was not driven by a specific cut.
Okay. And is there any time left, Mr. Chair?
10 seconds.
Thank you for your time. And thank you, Patrick.
We will now go to Mr. Abulte for 4 minutes, please.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to give 1 minute to Mr. Macaulay, and then I will continue after that.
Mr. Macaulay, you have 1 minute.
Great. I'll only need maybe half of that. Thanks, Mr. Abulte. Mr. Matthews, very quick question. I want to get back to Medicom. They were sole source the contract. Was the fact that their directors or ownership are extremely generous donators to the Liberal Party, did that play any role in them being granted the sole source contract instead of looking at other companies that could provide the mass faster for Canadians?
The contract was based on their ability to stand up domestic manufacturing capability quickly, and their experience in this field. So it was based on quality and speed, and so they were.
That's fine. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Abulte.
Okay, thank you. Question to I've got in Mr. Matthews' remarks, the K95 calls masks in the NS remarks is called respiration. Which is which?
So to label it properly,
is it the mask or respirators?
It's N95 respirators is the proper terminology, I believe, but maybe my friends at PHAC would.
Is that what you use on the purchase order?
We would actually get a little more standards, Mr. Chair, in terms of being exactly specific. There's various kinds of N95, so you'd be quite specific on that.
So you refer to it in a purchase order as respirator, correct?
I haven't got the purchase order in front of me, Mr. Chair, but maybe my colleagues could answer. But it's very specific in terms of understanding what the standard is.
I would like a feedback on that, please, to the committee at some point. An answer on that would be great. There is an information there that there's some prepaid, $100 million was prepaid to a supplier in China. Was that, are you aware of that?
I think, Mr. Chair, in general, I'd say, and I think I spoke about this last time I was here, with the competitive market, the market did change to a place where initially you had to make some prepayments to a place where it went to 50%. And then there were companies you could not get a contract unless you were flowing money in advance. So there is a variety of things at play, but that was actually, and still continues to be, the circumstances on the ground for certain types of product in China.
So the $100 million prepaid is?
I'm not confirming the dollar amount, Mr. Chair, but I'm saying there were prepayments.
We do appreciate if you can confirm that number also to the committee, please, as soon as possible. You mentioned about 30 flights that came back. We know that some flights came back empty. How many up to date? How many flight that came back empty out of the 30?
So it turns out, Mr. Chair, there was actually no empty flights. We thought there was one that was empty, but it turns out Air Canada was able to load some other cargo onto it. So it was not Canadian government cargo, but it came back with some other cargo on it. That is the only one, the government of Canada's, that was rumored to be empty. And it turns out it did indeed have no government of Canada cargo, but it did have some other cargo on it.
For that purpose, I would request also the manifest of all these flights, the 30 flights. If you can submit that to us, would be great. Possible?
In theory, Mr. Chair, I'll have to get back to you, but in theory, we can come up with something that would show the product that was on the flights, I'm sure.
Now, we would like a copy of the manifest, if that's okay.
I will do my best, Mr. Chair.
How many cancellation have you gone through due to lack of finding the supplies in China available for pickup? Can you advise us on that?
Early on, Mr. Chair, we had one or two.
Very brief answer, please.
I can be very brief, Mr. Chair. Early on, we had one or two cancellations due to uncertainty of cargo availability, so we took some precaution. Since then, we've had a cancellation or two because of congestion at the airports, not because of cargo issues.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. McKinnon for 4 minutes, please.
Why, thank you, Mr. Chair, et merci tout le monde. I know firsthand, it must be said, how much of an incredible effort and organization has been deployed by the folks at PSPC, and I know secondhand by the folks at the Public Health Agency of Canada. Je pense que les Canadiens sont et seront.
I think Canadians are being well served by these teams and by these public servants. So that is worth mentioning today, and I'd like to thank all of you for your many efforts. I know that people are working all day long, all night long. Thank you very much.
Ask just in pursuant to the questioning of Mr. McCauley, just to clean something up really quickly. Mr. Matthews, we are still actively searching for sources of N95 supply, correct?
We are absolutely searching for N95 supply, Mr. Chair, and it continues to be, and our colleagues from PHAC can share on this, it is probably the most important piece of equipment, PPE, we can purchase, so it is an active engagement.
Anyone from PHAC want to comment on that, or if not, I'll move on? No. So let me segue from that, because Mr. McCauley was also interested in domestic sources, and I think one of the emerging success stories of in the absolute somber nature of this pandemic has been the efforts to stand up domestic supply of PPE and other innovations. And Mr. Matthews, I just want to ask you, working with departments, like I said, with the Public Health Agency, we've been able to secure LOIs, in some cases contracts, with many domestic suppliers. Can you just tell me about how that process works and how we would go about both identifying a potential domestic supplier of PPE, for example, and then the procurement steps that would be involved in getting material ultimately?
Certainly, Mr. Chair, and the question did highlight that we are indeed working with colleagues at ISED to identify potential domestic capacity, and that could be either a new stand-up or retooling an existing factory to manufacture something different. So ISED beats the bushes to basically identify potential companies who are interested and capable of delivering for the Government of Canada. To date, we have issued about 44, 45 LOIs with ISED, and they have turned into 24 contracts. And in some cases, you can issue an LOI, and that's as far as it goes, but you enter into discussions and with the intent of hopefully reaching a contract. And so there's still about 7 in active discussion of those 44. First up, you would have seen domestic supply start in hand sanitizers, some great success stories there. Face shields followed very quickly after that. And then what's coming next are gowns. They've started to arrive. And then you're into ventilators and masks will be next up with some swabs as well. So it's it's been evolving, and certainly early success, as I mentioned, on face shields, hand sanitizer, and gowns are now starting to arrive as well.
Et l'une des choses que nous avons entendues comme gouvernement.
One of the things we heard very clearly and strongly from the government is that we cannot be in a situation where we don't have any procurement at the national level in a further context.
If you could switch.
And I've stopped this, so I'm not docking you any time, Mr. McKinnon, but what I mentioned in my opening remarks, you may not have been on the line at that time, is that if you start a question in one official language, try and complete the entire question without switching back and forth. Yes. It makes our technical capabilities much more efficient.
Des vieilles habitudes, Monsieur le Président.
Old habits, Mr. Chair. Please forgive me. The government clearly heard the need for domestic procurement for regular use as well, and I believe the government is acting as quickly as it can on this. Mr. Matthews gave us a number of various possibilities.
And even though I gave you some additional time for my quick intervention, we are completely out of time now. Monsieur Barcelo-Duval?
Mr. Barcelo-Duval. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to come back to the National Strategic Stockpile. I have trouble understanding how the inventory management works. You're saying you're following up with the provinces to see what the needs are, but the government of Quebec was missing and needed more supplies at the beginning of the crisis, and you had masks that were expired that were thrown out at the federal level. How is it possible that there was no connection made between the two orders of government? I understand that the masks were expired, but you didn't know that they were already expired, or that were going to expire in 6 months and a year. I mean, you just let that go. You just simply get rid of it. I just don't understand how it's managed.
So perhaps I'll start and then over to my colleague to actually talk about what has happened with Quebec in particular. Just to be clear, those masks that expired were purchased in 2009. They expired 5 years after, in 2014, and they were destroyed in 2019, well before we had any inkling that this would be coming upon us. What we have done is we had retained some other expired stock much more recently, and Health Canada in an emergency can often actually give you the authority to use expired materials. They still have to be subjected to a verification to make sure that they do not pose any risk to the end user, and anything that we did have as well, we talked to our provinces and territories who also had expired stock, and where we were able to get the authority from Health Canada to use expired product, subject to a visual inspection, we did.
Thank you very much. Mr. Green, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I still can't understand how in this system that you sit on these products for 10 years and that you make the statement before you knew this was going to happen. That's the whole essence of a national emergency stockpile. Can you care to comment on what lessons at least that you have learned? Because my concern here, my passion comes from the fact that we're already told we're in a hyper-competitive environment and that we're going to have future second waves, third waves of this. I think the public deserves to know, like, what is your department doing in face of the mismanagement of the last 10 years of this national emergency stockpile?
To begin with, I would disagree with the closing part of your argument. I actually believe that NEST was managed according to its mandate and its funding. Having said that, on a go-forward basis, there are many lessons that we've been learning that we begin to implement, and I suspect that the management, not just of the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile, but also of the federal, provincial, territorial discussions, arrangements, and understanding of what is out there broadly will change dramatically. We are working closely through logistics advisory committees and a number of deputy and ministerial forums to identify needs, burn rates, not just for the immediate, but also ongoing business as economies open and potentially preparation for a second wave. That is a completely different order of business than we've had in the past, and we are laying some very good groundwork in terms of getting the information that we need, as well as the province's relationships.
Is there an avenue for which I can find out exactly how many other products and the quantity of products have been disposed? Because I'm very concerned. The only reason why we found out about this is because of a waste bin contract that went south in Regina.
Everything that we have done
and
has
Mrs.
been...
Thornton, unfortunately, we're out of time. And I know you have an answer. I wonder if you can provide that answer in writing to our clerk as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll now go to the second round. Again, it'll be 5-minute interventions, starting with Mrs. Block.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I would just start off the top by responding to that last comment by saying, I think that anyone who leaves a stockpile of supplies 5 years past their expiry date in a warehouse, that to me is the very definition of mismanagement. I'm going to turn some of my comments over to PSPC. We have been advised that PSPC has established agreements with Canadian companies that are obviously stepping up to support Canada's efforts. We were given a list. It's not a limited list. There were 12 companies on that list. Can you tell me how many of the Canadian companies that we've contracted with have been given 10-year contracts, similar to Medicom?
Mr. Chair, Medicom, I think, is the only 10-year contract that I'm aware of. Ariane may wish to chime in on this one, but that was basically necessitated because to attract a manufacturing facility, you need to promise them a certain volume of business, and that was the vehicle that we chose to essentially make sure the investment was warranted on their part, was to give a long-term contract. And so 10 years was the agreement that was reached.
So does a company who is awarded a sole source contract still provide the government with a proposal?
Mr. Chair, so essentially to start the negotiations, you would have had an LOI, and then you would have had a negotiation where they would essentially respond to a statement of work and a negotiation from there. So you would have seen a document like a proposal to go through and evaluate it, and make sure it met the needs of Canada.
Would those documents include other companies that the company that is getting the contract with? Would their documents include other companies that they are planning on working with?
Not necessarily, Mr. Chair. What you would see, though, was a discussion of the supply chain itself, because what you're looking for is domestic production. So as part of the discussion, you would have discussions about where they intend to get their supplies, but it's up to the prime contractor where they get their supplies. We just want to make sure they have a plan in place when you're negotiating these things.
So when this contract was awarded to Medicom, was there any indication that they would be working with SNC-Lavalin?
And before you answer, Mr. Matthews, once again, if you can keep the microphone close to your mouth, please.
I apologize, Mr. Chair. I'm having a hard time with that today. Hopefully that's better. So no, our discussion, Mr. Chair, is basically with the prime contractor, and the agreement is with them. The subcontractors are their business.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So regarding the contracts for all protective equipment, how many contracts has PSP signed to date?
Mr. Chair, we're in the range of over 200 contracts. We can't give you the exact number today because it changes daily, but let's call it 200. But Ariane, do you want to correct me, because you may be more current than I am?
So how many have been signed with manufacturers in China?
The breakdown, we may have to get back to you on that, Mr. Chair, but China is still a very significant player in terms of the PPE market. So I would, the majority of products are still being manufactured in China. The contract may not be with a company in China, though. The contract may be with a Canadian company who's acquiring through China, or you may have some directly in China. So I believe that's what's important. Ariane, do you wish to add anything on this front?
Okay, it looks like oh, okay.
There she is.
Only to add that it was accurate.
We only have a very few seconds, ma'am.
Only to add it was accurate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Johari for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be sharing my time with MP Weiler. I have one follow-up question for Madam Thornton. You indicated in the response to a question that one of our colleagues raised today, and you took an exception by saying that your department or any SS operated within its mandate and within its funding. Now, we've heard over the last few hours on how NES's mandate has changed and how have you responded. Now, you also mentioned that the budget for NES is about $3 million. With the new evolving mandate, and you responded saying how it's evolving, do you have the sufficient funding to be able to get us not only through this, but also position us for future? And upon the answer, I yield the rest of the time to Mr. Weiler. Thank you.
So the government writ large has been very good in making sure that we have the appropriate funding to do what needs to be done. The Public Health Agency of Canada is relying on a number of different partners to do so, including the Canadian Armed Forces and other folks from within the federal family who are joining us on assignment. We're a relatively small organization, about 2,000 people for the whole agency. And within the nest, it really is originally 18 people and an operational budget of $3 million. We were not structured to do something of this magnitude. We do now have the capacity. It's been borrowed and it will be funded. I also suspect that as a result of this, both the mandate and the funding of NES will be informed by the process and what our expectations are going forward and will be changed radically. I would flag, though, it's not just within the federal family in terms of the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile. It's the system. It's the working with our provinces and territories, understanding what happens in the jurisdictions, understanding their needs, and determining who is respectively responsible, who will purchase, where things will be stockpiled. So I think there's a much greater oversight, monitoring, management role. At the end of the day, I suspect that the purchasing and the stockpiling will rest with provinces and local governments where it's probably best positioned. Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Weiler, Mr. Weiler, you've got about 1:30.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister recently announced an advisory group for COVID procurement. I was hoping you could tell me both a little bit about what the goal of the Supply Council is and what the experience has been to date.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So it's fairly new. The committee has met one time, and it is really about engaging with outside experts in terms of getting advice on procurement and the supply system as a whole. So we've got quite a varied background of industry players there. And, you know, first meeting was very much a sharing of experiences that they're seeing in their own industries in terms of PPE, and we shared ours. And you know, I think it'll be, given the experience around the table, it'll be very useful dialogue to have with that committee in terms of any advice they may have going forward and observations they wish to share with us.
Great. And has this Supply Council or just otherwise, has there been specific raw materials that have been identified that will be critical to procure in order to continue to produce PPE in Canada?
Great question, Mr. Chair. That is part of the discussion. So it's one thing to say you can manufacture in Canada, and it's another thing to say you can get the raw materials to manufacture in Canada. So there's the capability and the raw materials, and we need both at our disposal, or the companies do, to succeed in their endeavor. If you look at gowns, the material necessary to make gowns is in really short supply. So Health Canada, knowing that, actually approved 2 additional types of material that are now approved for gown making. And the Canadian gown manufacturing industry that has stood up is largely relying on those 2 new types of material. The other one that's popped up is a chemical that's necessary for reagent, and so which is essential for the testing process. Initially, it was in short supply. We managed to bring some over from China, and now we've got some Canadian manufacturing happening of reagent as well. So you're seeing those types of things pop up, but you can't have a discussion about manufacturing in Canada without talking about where the supplies are coming from.
Great. And Mr. Chair, how long do I have left?
About 10 seconds.
Okay. Well, I'll just leave it at that then. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll now go to Madame Vignola. 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Vignola, 5 minutes, please. Thank you. My questions will be for Mr. Matthews. In your written document in your brief, which you shortened, it states that there was a call for proposals on May 4th, and this is just before the various transporters. So was that call for those transporters, and before May the 4th, was it not possible to know that we were going to need more capacity for flights and cargo? I'd like to see what kind of planning your department has done and how many responses have you gotten?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. A couple of points here. So we often use a request for interest just to gauge industry interest in terms of its ability to respond. So that was sent out, and then we went to the next step, which is a formal request for a proposal. So that proposal has now closed, and we have had responses which we are now evaluating. I believe we've had around 5 submissions, which we will go through and assess and go through a normal procurement process and award a contract soon thereafter. The reason for the actual work itself is we effectively have hit a point where the 1 plane per day coming out of China requires an awful lot of logistical supports, and we are seeing our warehouse in China. We can forecast a surge of material coming into that warehouse, and we were just planning to make sure we had adequate support to make sure goods are flowing out of the warehouse onto planes and into Canada. And so to deal with that surge, we temporarily put in a 5-flight contract with UPS, which was very successful in terms of upping the goods coming out. And then we decided that we should maybe put something more permanent in place in case there's more surges to deal with.
OK, bon.
All right. So you mentioned that Medicom was supposed to provide masks over 10 years. That it's a 10-year contract and so on. And you said that you had to strengthen that contract to make sure that you could get Medicom on board, and it's a question of investment and so on. Now, we're looking at 15 million masks, and why does this other company not need a long-term contract to encourage them?
It depends on the investment required, Mr. Chair, to actually get something up and running. So if you look at something like hand sanitizer, there was existing plants in Canada that could effectively change very quickly without a lot of expense to start producing hand sanitizer. If you looked at gowns, I would, they required a bit of investment, so they were looking for some volume. Something like a brand new facility with heavy manufacturing equipment, they needed a substantial duration to make it worth their while.
So Concord was making how many face shields to start with already per year before you give it awarded a contract?
J'essaie de comprendre.
I'm trying to understand the process.
Medicom, I thought we were speaking about.
No, Concord.
So, la question était.
The question was, Medicom got a contract, a 10-year contract, because it needed to consolidate its investments for various reasons. But there are other companies, such as Concord, which also obtained contracts, 15 million of face shields, for example. But there's no 10-year contract in place, for example. I mean, did they not need to consolidate their investments, their infrastructure? I mean, 15 million face shields, that's a lot. Is that what they're already producing right now, or were they producing less?
No, they're certainly producing more now, but the question of duration of contract was more about the investment required to change the production line. And so in Concord's case, just to compare the two, you wouldn't have seen the level of investment required to their physical structure to start producing that volume of mask, whereas something brand new where you're bringing in new machinery, new buildings, you require a much more substantial investment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, merci.
Okay, thank you.
Décidément, il nous faudrait des.
We definitely would need more like 20 minutes, Lukivsky, Mr. Lukivsky. All right.
Go to Mr. Green for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about the notion of a radical change that is going to be required for the National Emergency Strategic Stockpile. We've heard about whole of government. I'd like to ask to either Mr. Matthews or to Ms. Thornton if they've had preliminary conversations about integrating between PSPC, which is supposed to have the expertise on procurement, and the Health Security Infrastructure branch, to talk more about how we can have a more integrated whole of government supply chain.
Maybe I'll start, Mr. Chair, and then turn to my PHAC colleagues. So what you're seeing right now is collaboration in terms of ordering to meet the current need. I believe, Mr. Chair, the question is around going forward, do you see a different form of collaboration?
That's correct. If I could just clarify so that we're not, it's because in the last iteration when we had Minister Anand here, she had made it very clear that their responsibility of PSPC stops the moment that it's ordered and it hits the shores here. So I'm wondering if there could be a greater supply management responsibility with PSPC to be able to identify and flag early so that we're never in a situation again where we have this critical, 20% of our stock discarded in the eve of an epidemic.
So I think the value add that PSPC would bring to that conversation, Mr. Chair, would be around when you're looking at certain goods based on what we know now, should the situation occur again, what are the lead times? How long does it take to get here? And so that can factor into any planning, but I think the actual planning for the NES itself, that would be more in PHAC's bailiwick.
So I think I've exhausted that. I know I've probably exhausted Ms. Thornton. I'll stick with you. Mr. Matthews, we've heard today that there's been 11.5 million respirators which have been received to date, and yet there's been 9.9 million N95 respirators which were assessed, thanks to the good work, I should say, of PHAC, but we're not meeting the specifications. Based on the earlier line of questioning, is it safe for me to assume that Deloitte's role in procurement in terms of quality verification failed miserably here, or was it something other than Deloitte?
Mr. Chair, I think the question of QA has been evolving since this started. So again, when this started, it was let's get contracts in place quickly, mad scramble to get mask contracts in place. And these were these KN95 masks that arrived were part of the earlier set of contracts. The QA we're doing now involves, the ideal is you basically vet the company in advance. That was already being done. We're dealing more directly with the manufacturers in China now than we did in the past, as opposed to a Canadian intermediary. The principle we'd like to move to, and PHAC certainly has a role here, is the more we can test in China, the better off it is because you don't bring it here.
I could, Mr. Matthews, that to me, when we talk about the integration between the two ministries, going back to 90s corporate jargon, the silos that happen, the fact that we didn't have a sample tested prior to delivery on the order and magnitude of 9.9 million respirators is very concerning. So when I move forward, we're going to have that happen.
So we're doing to the extent possible, but something as important as N95, and I'm going to flip to Eric or Sally here in a moment. We want to test that in Canada as well. So you can get, you can have a company test itself, and that's great. But we still, before we put something in the medical system, and I'm drifting into PHAC turf here, they want to make sure it meets their needs. So Eric or Sally, do you want to comment on QA?
Yeah, my point being to whomever's about to comment on is that it would make sense to me to have somebody from PHAC and PSPC working on the ground in China to test the samples before you order darn near 10 million of these masks, to have them turn around and shipped back.
Mr. Chair, I agree. The best case scenario would be independent testing, and I underline independent testing.
Your audio levels are very low.
I'm sorry. I agree with Mr. Chair that the best case scenario is independent testing in China, and I underline independent because sometimes the tests that a company will do are not the same as when we do the testing. That would be the ideal scenario. To date, we've tried to locate with PSPC and with others laboratories in China that are available to do the testing. There are some with international reputations which we would gladly hire, but they are backlogged for weeks and months.
Sure, I can totally.
Yeah, which is why we've moved to bringing samples to Canada and testing them here before bringing in the bulk.
And I need to go on the record and say I'm very grateful that happened. 10 million masks, if they were compromised, Mr. Chair, into the public would have been another scandal. But certainly every
Thank you.
single one of these products is potentially a life saved. And that's the kind of urgency that I wanted to bring to this conversation today.
Thank you very much. We'll go to our 4-minute round, starting with Mr. McCauley. Mr. McCauley, are you there?
Yep. Sorry, my mistake. Thanks, Mr. Chair. PHAC and Mr. Matthews, we saw recently the U.S. banned a fair amount of Chinese companies, the importation of masks from them, including one of them, the Guangdong Golden Leaves company, and yet they are still on the approved list for Canada. Would we not be following some of the issues that or following the U.S. on banning some of these companies? Why are we still have that company as an approved one?
Maybe I'll start and others can weigh in. Sorry, Mr. Chair, I wasn't sure.
Just yourself.
Well, I think health and PHAC may have a role here, but I think the U.S. experience has highlighted that there's a lot of fraud happening in terms of manufacturing these types of masks, and you want to make sure that you're getting the legit product. So I think the issue with the company you're quoting, is being quoted here, Mr. Chair, is around some fraudulent masks. Right. So we're monitoring very carefully, but
But let me ask: we've been burned by fraudulent masks. The U.S. has pointed out this company as a problem. Why would we just be monitoring them? Why wouldn't we just ban them outright?
And I think, as was mentioned earlier, Mr. Chair, the question of who gets banned and who gets licenses is Health Canada. So I think better close to them.
I'll move on quickly. The masks, the original, the million masks that came in that were substandard, we were told that we'd get probably our money back. Then we heard in the House of Commons, the PSPC minister said, well, we're going to use them because it's just the elastics. Then we heard from Global Affairs saying, well, it was a contract issue. What are we doing with those masks? And the other 8 million masks we heard about, which are going to be used for surgical masks, we paid full price of them for them being N95 masks. Are we getting them discounted or rebated to reflect the value of what these masks are being used for?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. What I believe I said was we expect the supplier to stand behind the product. And this is a product that is in short supply.
Expect isn't for sure.
So, Mr. Chair, we had a number of issues depending on the lot. We had some where the elastics were an issue. And then as time wore on, filtration became the more common problem. And so we are still in negotiation. We have paused all deliveries with the supplier, and it's an ongoing discussion is all I can say at this stage, Mr. Chair.
Okay. But getting back, the minister said we were going to use those masks, but for non-N95 use. Are we going to continue to pay full price for those masks, though, even though they're not being used for what we paid for, just like the 8 million masks that we spoke about earlier in committee?
So, Mr. Chair, as I said, we are in ongoing discussions with the company just about how this will wrap up.
When did we start negotiations with Medicon, please?
Mr. Chair, I'm going from memory here, but I would say early April. Ariane, do you have a better recollection of date?
And when did we sign the contract with them?
Contract would have been, we'll have to get back to you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to guess because.
But it was in April?
In that one. Definitely, it was before May the 1st, for sure. April would be my guess, but I'll have to confirm details.
But it was very, very recent. Okay. Mr. Chair, how much time, if any?
30 seconds.
Okay. What is it costing us to test all these masks? We're paying top price or more for masks that can't be used for what we're buying for, and then test them. What's the testing costing us?
I don't have a dollar amount. We're using the National Research Council's laboratory, the metrology laboratory, to do the testing. So there has been a certain amount of purchasing of equipment, TSI machine.
In that case, I would ask that you to supply a dollar amount in writing and give that answer to our clerk so she can distribute it to all of our members. We'll now go to Mr. Kuzmierczak for 4 minutes, please. Mr. Kuzmierczak, can you hear us? Mr. Kuzmierczak going once, going twice, going three times. Either Mr. McKinnon, Mr. Drouin, or Mr. Weiler. Would one of you care to step in?
I'll step in, Mr. Chair, just in case Mr. Kuzmierczak will take my my time after. Mr. Matthews, thank you for appearing before this committee once again in less than a month. We certainly appreciate your time. You've touched on a really important point with the discussion with regards to the advisory council and the supply council talking about the availability of raw material. And I'm wondering if PSPC is having some conversations with ISED and if there's Canadian companies that are thinking about whether or not the way we design N95 masks and use that particular raw material, whether or not there is a way to reduce that so we can ensure the proper sourcing of these N95 masks. I'm wondering if there's these types of conversations happening.
Certainly, different approaches are always under consideration. The one I would highlight, Mr. Chair, for N95 is more around sterilization and reuse. These are such a precious commodity at the moment. Is there not a way to reuse those? And so it happens now, but we're looking to expand the way in which those can be reused to basically, A, less waste, and B, it's a precious good. So can't speak to whether there's other discussions about alternatives to N95 underway, but that would be more in the realm of ISED.
And I see Mr. Dagenet wants to jump in.
Yes. So having been at ISED, the National Research Council actually has a challenge for made in Canada filtration material for the manufacture of N95 respirators and surgical masks. And that challenge closed recently. So there has been a call to Canadian industry to see if they can develop alternatives. So it's absolutely on top people's minds.
Great. Mr. Kuzmierczak, did you want to jump in now, or do you want me to go on and...
No, yes, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. The power just went down, so.
Mr. Kuzmierczak, you'll have to increase your audio level a little, please.
Oh, wonderful. How does that sound? Is that better?
Marginally.
Marginally, okay.
You got to move your earpiece down.
Your mic is in the wrong place.
Okay, good. Is that better?
You're
Much better. Go ahead, please.
Chair, how much time do I have?
1 minute. No, you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wonderful.
I'm sorry, 1 minute.
1 minute. Okay. Mr. Dagenet, you mentioned in your remarks that the bulk procurement process, the products are distributed through an allocation approach approved by the federal, provincial, and territorial ministers. Can you just go into a little bit of detail in terms of how that allocation process works?
Yeah, so after the ministers agreed, essentially what we do is we push out proactively 80% of what we receive on a per capita basis, and the NES withholds 20%, which we allocate when provinces make calls on this. We call them requests for assistance. We've had 57 requests for assistance so far, and essentially it's designed to recognize the fact that the current pandemic isn't hitting provinces the same, so maybe a per capita approach is not a straight capita approach is not appropriate.
So it does respond.
Unfortunately, thank you very much. We're out of time. We'll now go to Mr. Abulte for 4 minutes, please.
Yes, PHAC is currently deploying 81 sterilization devices from Stryker Canada that will provide provinces and territories with the capacity to reprocess approximately 275,000 N95 respirators a week. The question is, how much of a Stryker Canada supply is based in Canada or in North America?
So Stryker Canada, so it's a PHAC. So Stryker, we're buying 82 machines and we're distributing 81, and one is actually going to the National Research Council. But Stryker, until last August, was a Canadian-based company. The Stryker machine was designed and manufactured in Canada, and they still have a very strong presence near Quebec City, and they continue to be, so there's 60 that are already made, and they're making another 20. Those are being made in Quebec City.
So Stryker was somehow acquired by an American company, do you know?
Stryker is the American company. The original company, the name escapes me, but
okay.
Yep.
Is there any other companies that are assisting in providing the services that Stryker is doing just to make sure we got the extra support?
Health Canada has approved 5 technologies to reprocess N95 masks. And it's very confusing because they all start with ST, but there's Stryker, Sterad, Steris. I think there's BioClean or CleanWorks and Canal, if memory serves.
So Stryker is not a sole source in this task.
In this case, Stryker was the first of the technologies that we looked at to have been approved, and Stryker did not go through a competitive process.
So it's a sole source.
Correct.
Okay. So will you be able to provide a list of all major suppliers that been awarded contracts to supply PPEs?
I'm sure we can provide the list of contracts. I'm maybe turn to my colleague, Mr. Matthews.
We can certainly highlight most of the Canadian ones. The international ones we are not disclosing at this stage because we have done it under the procurements under an NSE, and we are wanting to sort of protect our sources just because product availability is such a competitive field.
We have millions of masks that have been rejected because they're not qualified or they don't pass specifications. And now you are suggesting that you will not provide the list of those suppliers or the names of those suppliers. I think Canadians need to know, and we are, as parliamentarians, we need to know the names of those suppliers. Would you be able to provide names to the committee for these international companies?
Not at this stage, Mr. Chair. As I mentioned, the procurement is being done under NSE, and we do want to protect our supply lines, if I can use those words, while the crisis is in such a competitive stage from a procurement perspective. So to properly protect our product, we are not wanting to do that at this stage.
But the product is in the market and has labels on them. So why wouldn't you provide the name of the suppliers? I mean, the factory's names are on the boxes, aren't they?
So, Mr. Chair, the product, in fact, is not out in public domain. It's being held and given, as was mentioned earlier, to other government sources. And the contract itself is still under discussion. So I wouldn't be wise of us to be sharing those names at this stage.
How do we know that some of this product is not coming and disqualified from source, as you're not inspecting it at source and coming back here, and someone and your supplier is basically doing something to change the label or relabeling those products and giving it back?
We'll have to end the discussion there, but if there is an answer you wish to provide, Mr. Matthews, I again would encourage you to do it as quickly as possible in writing through our clerk. We'll now go to the last of our 4-minute interventions. We'll go back to Mr. Drouin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will share my time with Ms. May. Quickly, Mr. Matthews, I've been reading stories about stolen goods at airports and warehouses in China. Is it from your understanding that it's impacting or potentially impacting our supply chain to Canada?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly a risk. And when I talk about how things have evolved on the ground in China since this started, we had to put in measures to make sure we were effectively getting our supplies as they came off the production line because of risk of either potentially theft or just being outbid on the factory floor. So that was one of the early adjustments that the Government of Canada made, was to take steps to basically secure that supply line as it came off the factory floor and get it to a warehouse that Government of Canada warehouse rented or leased, and then arrange for transport ourselves. If we were in a normal environment, Mr. Chair, we would be looking to our suppliers to basically transport the goods to Canada themselves. But that just was proving to be an overly risky endeavor given the environment on the global stage and competition for goods. So that we've made those adjustments on the ground in China to properly secure our product.
Thank you. Ms. May, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I assume that that's okay with the chair. Thank you so much. I want to go back to Ms. Thornton. It strikes me, and I know a lot of the questions have been fairly combative, but I think there's a collective failure in Canada. I wonder if you would agree with me that we made decisions after the SARS epidemic that we would be prepared and that there should be minimum stocks of PPE available in Canada, and that allowing so many PPE critical equipment to be well past its best before date at 5 years past expiration suggests that we lost track of this critical function of preparedness. And I wonder if you could comment on what we will do in future to make sure this doesn't happen again.
So if I may, thank you for the question. And Mr. Chair, on the items that were 5 years past expiry, again, we do have an inventory management system. There would have been no demand for those products, or they would have been used prior. On a go-forward basis, though, I do think that this whole episode, the pandemic, will inform not just how the federal government approaches our national emergency strategic stockpile, but also our relationship and engagement with the provinces and territories. There has been a significant increase in transparency. When we did our first call out, provinces and territories largely had distributed systems within their own organizations and could not tell us right off the top what they had in their stockpiles, what they needed, what their burn rates are. Through this, we've actually all learned about the need, the use, not just for the health system, but we're beginning collectively to also learn about outside of the health system. I do think it's going to be very different in terms of management, collaboration with the provinces and territories, and ultimately some principles around stockpiling. We're beginning to identify not just next wave, but what would be appropriate as a matter of course. Is it 6 weeks burn rate? Is it 1 week burn rate? But also where and who should actually have those stockpiles. So I think it'll be very different. I'm not so sure how different it will be from the federal actual stockpile, but probably a great deal different from the federal collaboration with our provinces and territories. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The final 2 minutes will go first to Monsieur Bassarou-Duval. 2 minutes, please, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Bassarou-Duval, 2 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question will be regarding procurement. For years now, we've had governments that have had as an ideology that will go procure supplies where it's the cheapest overseas and so on. And now we're finding ourselves in a situation where we have a great difficulty procuring supplies. Will there be a deep rethink of this? Will all of this vision of saying, oh, it's okay, we can just go overseas where prices are cheaper, we don't even know if during crises we'll be able to get supplies first before themselves? Will there be a rethink?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I think a couple of things I would share on this front. You're already seeing kind of a live rethink in that it's clear that a high percentage of the PPE that is in demand comes from outside the country, and in particular out of China. And so you saw a country that was, the main supplier for a lot of countries being pressed in terms of its manufacturing capability. You've already seen the domestic stand-up starts in Canada. I've mentioned hand sanitizer, face shields, gowns, ventilators, and masks to come. I think in that group of domestic suppliers and manufacturers, what you will see is some who are doing this on a temporary basis, just until things come back to normal, and others who are making this, a more permanent endeavor. And so I would say the rethink has already started because you're seeing some of this capacity that will stay with us. And hence, we talked about it a few times already, the 10-year deal with Medicom for masks. That's because there's a desire to have an ongoing presence for Canadian supplied masks for the future, not just to get us through this pandemic.
Thank you very much, Mr. Green. Your final intervention for 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. What is the national supply standard for the quantity of N95 masks across the national strategic supply stockpile prior to the decision to closing Regina warehouse and the other ones versus after? To Ms. Thornton, please.
Yeah. No, thank you. And Mr. Chair, our amounts that were stockpiled were basically geared towards responding to a couple of incidents within Canada. They weren't actually geared towards supplying something for every Canadian.
What was the number? I just need the number, Ms. Thornton.
I have no number. Thank you.
Okay, what I would like to request is that in writing, you provide us with a number of what the national supply standard was for the quantity of N95 masks. That will allow us to determine whether the disposal was in keeping with the management system that you have.
We will
presented.
provide with the information about the disposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have 1 minute, Mr. Green, if you care to utilize it.
No, I think I've overstayed my minutes as it is here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Then we will excuse our witnesses. Mr. Matthews, thank you for appearing with your officials. Madam Thornton, thank you for appearing here with your witnesses. Your testimony has been informative as always and very helpful. You are excused. Colleagues, we will just give them a moment to leave the meeting, and then we will continue immediately with our committee business. I remind you all, it is in public. So we will suspend just for a moment and come back
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
with our committee. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I'm checking now, Mr. Chair.
Just about 15 minutes left. So I want to deal with future witnesses and future meetings. As you know, next week, we do not have a meeting on Monday because of Victoria Day. We will have a meeting on Friday, the 22nd, and the Minister of Health, Minister Hadju, will be with us at that time. I'm going to ask Raphael in just a moment to go forward with the proposed witness lists for the remaining meetings. But just again, a comment. We have, taking a look at the meetings yet to come, I noticed that there are a number of witnesses that have been suggested by committee members who have provided testimony at other standing committees, and that's fine. I'm just hoping we can avoid duplication of testimony. If witnesses who have appeared at, say, finance or other committees are coming to testify before us, as long as they're providing new testimony, that's great. But I would hate to think that we are just rehashing the same old testimony that has been heard before. So that's my only comment on that matter. Raphael, could you please give us a little update of some of the witnesses and some of the meetings on your work plan yet to come before we adjourn Parliament for the summer?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. So the committee has approved to have the 9th meeting, which will be on May 25th on cybersecurity. And after that, on the work plan, what Ryan and I have proposed is to have the 10th meeting on the oversight of government activities. And I want to point out to members that both the PBO and the Interim Auditor General have appeared before FINA this past Tuesday. However, a new AG has been appointed this week. And then for the 11th meeting, we have representatives from the government of Alberta and also a nonprofit organization. The 12th meeting would be on industry groups. And the last meeting that we have proposed would be the 13th one on procurement and benefits with 2 ministers, so Minister Anand and Minister Hussain.
Thank you, Raphael. Colleagues, I believe you have all received copies of the proposed work plan from Raphael. I'll invite commentary now if you think that we're missing a witness or there are some witnesses that we do not need to hear from because of duplication. And perhaps then, Steve, if I could ask you, I'm not sure if you have information to this or not, but we are officially reconvened, I guess, in Parliament on May 25th. I'm not sure if there's any thought being given whether Parliament will continue to the end of our normal scheduled parliamentary calendar or if there's any amendments to that calendar. So colleagues, first, if you have a question or a comment or a suggestion, if you could raise your hand and we'll try and take you in order. I don't see any.
I don't know, Tom, if you were asking me if I had information about how long Parliament's going, I don't know.
I was.
The answer to that. Obviously.
Thanks for sharing. All right. Is there any other question? Yeah, Mr. Duan, I see, and Mr. Clerk. We'll go to Paul, our clerk, first before we go to Francis, and then Mrs. Block.
The list I've seen is Mr. Macaulay, Ms. Block, and then Mr. Drouin are the three that I have noticed.
Excellent. Thank you for that, because I did not notice that in which order. So we'll go to Mr. Macaulay first.
We can go Mr. Duran first, but my thoughts, yes, I want to avoid duplication as you commented, but I have been watching and reading the blues of a lot of the other committees, and it's a lot of good questions, but stonewalling or no answers. So as much as I want to avoid duplication, it's more important that Canadians get answers for a lot of these questions we're asking. The only other thought I'd have on the lineup we have coming is perhaps Minister Anand should appear at the same meeting as Minister Hajdu. What we saw again today, perfect example, we ask valid question and he gets punted to another department. Well, that's not my department. We saw it previously when Minister Anand was here, pass the buck on to Health or PHAC. We asked PHAC today. They passed the buck on to Health Canada. I think it's time we get them both in the same room so we end this pointing at someone who's not here and delaying very important answers to very important questions that are being posed.
So just so I'm clear, Mr. Macaulay, you're suggesting that both ministers, Anand and Hajdu, appear in the same meeting, perhaps?
Yeah,
are you suggesting on the same panel at the same time, or just one after the other?
Same panel, same time, one after the other, or, when Minister Anand is here, the DM from Health should be here. Because I'm getting tired of this. Again, we have procurement, we ask questions, ask PHAC. We have PHAC, ask Health. Well, you're part of Health. No, you should ask someone else. I hate to be cynical because that's not what my nature is like, but I'm starting to sense a real pattern here of them realizing, hey, the other people aren't in the room. Let's blame them and not answer the question.
Well, without getting into a debate, I'll first go to Mrs. Block and then Mr. Duan and then Mr. McKinnon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Unlike Mr. Macaulay, I have not immersed myself in the blues of other committees to see perhaps what questions are being asked in those committees of the witnesses that we are duplicating in our own committee. I would suggest that maybe they are asking different questions than we might from a government operations perspective. I'm not sure though. So unless somebody wants to provide me with that testimony so that I make sure I don't duplicate my questions should they appear here. I recall years ago when I was on OGO, one of the things that we endeavored to do when we were looking at inviting witnesses was to have some idea about where we wanted to go with our questioning so that they could advise us of who might be the most appropriate witness to invite so that we didn't find ourselves in a situation where we're asking questions and they're being referred to another department or deferred to someone who's not in the room. So I'm not sure how that would work. Perhaps when we are looking at different witnesses and inviting them, maybe even asking a department who might be the best suited to come. We have in our own minds who that might be, but maybe they could recommend someone given the line of questioning that has been coming to them from this committee. So, I'm reluctant to say just because they've shown up at another committee, it's not worth it to have them here. If we were sitting, we'd be meeting twice a week like we are now, and so I don't think there's any reason why we can't just continue on the path we're on. Thanks.
Yeah, let me be very clear. I'm not suggesting we circumvent or truncate any of the meetings. If there's worthwhile testimony, let's meet as long as we possibly can. I just, again, want to make sure that we're trying to provide new testimony and something that is informative. We'll go now to Mr. Drouin, then Mr. McKinnon, then Mr. Green.
Yeah, thanks. My only suggestion will be that we don't know what will happen after May 25th. We don't know what will be potentially negotiated. We have no idea how long we may be back. As you've mentioned, Mr. Chair, we may be back into regular sessions. Who knows? So I would keep the schedule maybe at a 2-week interval and then reconvene this committee to have the opportunity to discuss the agenda. The other point I'll mention is, we can blame departments for blaming them and pointing fingers and blaming on the other part, but there's also responsibility on us, and it's incumbent on us to ask the proper questions. And the questions with Health Canada was with regards to licensing and who gives the license, the authority to sell medical devices. And it's not public health, it is Health Canada. So that's just the point I want to make, is that yes, we can be frustrated about this, but it also incumbent on the questioner to ask the proper questions to the witnesses who are before us. And Minister Anand, I mean, she's already been here twice. How many more times do we want her every week? I'm just trying to get a sense of the committee. Are we going to go back and invite ministers and have them come back every week? I just, sometimes you may not get satisfactory questions, but if you're trying to go on a wild goose chase, sometimes you just won't find any gooses there. So I'm just, I don't have any objectives of having her potentially appear in the 13th meeting, but we've already had her twice in the space of a month. So I'm just trying to understand here, how many times do we want Minister Anand to appear before this committee?
Thank you. We'll go to Mr. McKinnon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Moi, je veux juste en...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to go in the same vein as Mr. Drouin and say that I agree with him. I believe Ms. Block. So I agree with Ms. Block. We can follow the suggestions from our analysts and to follow the schedule that's been provided. And I also want to indicate to Mr. McCauley that that's effectively what he had just asked for. He got today. He had the highest officials in the country in terms of procurement and public health together. He could have asked questions one to the other. So I think we just saw what he was asking for. We had them appearing today.
Yeah, I fully support Mr. McCauley's call. I mean, I may have been called combative today. It's certainly born from a frustration of getting information passed back and forth between departments who may not happen to be there in a particular day. And so I think, having accountability, which is really what this is all about. We don't have public accounts as a committee operating right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic and a crisis. And so, I think that the ministers have a responsibility to be responsible. And that includes coming before members of this committee to provide testimony that would get to the heart of the questions that we're asking. And so I fully support it. And I would encourage us to, continue this work. I'm still not satisfied, quite frankly, with the answers that I'm getting. And so when you hear, Stonewall, we can ask the same questions 5 different ways if we're not getting the answers because they're kicking it somewhere else. Anyways, I fully support Kelly in his position here.
Thanks. We'll now go back to Mrs. Block. But Mrs. Block, the last time you made some comments, it sounded like you were a bit of an echo chamber. Could you put your headset back on? Go ahead, please, Mrs. Block.
I did not have another intervention that I would like to make at this time. Sorry.
No, that's fine. My error. Then, Mr. McCauley, did you have another intervention?
Yeah, just I wanted to follow up on Mr. McKinnon's comments, and the fair comments by him and Mr. Drouin. But today was a perfect example. Like, how many times did we ask PHAC valid questions? And well, that's Health Canada. Maybe it's Health Canada. I saw answers to Mr. Green and to Ms. Block about the MDEL, Health Canada. When we had Minister Anand here, we were asking very valid questions about the national stockpile. Well, that's Health Canada. Or that's PHAC. PHAC shows up. Oh, that's someone else. And yes, I understand we can't continue this forever, but we have to continue till we get answers. And so I suspect we might have to continue a bit, but Mr. Drew and Mr. McKinnon, I certainly take your points and understand them.
Thanks, Mr. McCauley. And what we have before us, colleagues, you do have a suggested work plan that Raphael has sent out. I have not heard any specific suggestions as to either adding or deleting any witnesses from that work plan, except for Mr. McCauley's suggestion that perhaps we attempt to get both Minister Hajdu and Anand in the same meeting. Mr. Clerk, please add to this.
Just on that point, Mr. Chair, the committee had previously
audio levels are very low, Mr. Clerk.
My apologies, Mr. Chair. At a previous meeting, the committee had adopted a motion that Minister Hajdu, the Minister of Health, be invited to appear on the 22nd of May. The invitation has been issued. However, we have other witnesses also that were invited to appear who would be in the second hour, notably Canada Post Corporation, the Canadian Union of Postal Workers, as well as somebody from Amazon Canada. Part of the reason that I share the concern of bringing Minister Anand with Minister Hajdu would be that you would only have 1 hour to question both witnesses. I can extend the invitation if the committee wishes me to add Minister Anand on, but it might only leave the committee with 1 hour to question two ministers. The alternative is to stick with the plan the way it is, which would be Minister Anand being invited during the 13th meeting. We could change the invitation to Minister Hajdu as well. But I do want to point out that you may only have an hour if we add Minister Anand on with Minister Hajdu on the 22nd of May.
I would also point out the obvious to all committee members that ministers can be invited. That does not compel them to appear. If their schedules are such that they cannot appear on a date requested, it's strictly up to the ministers whether they want to accommodate our invitation and accept our invitation or not. So I add that just for your consideration when we're trying to set a schedule.
I would also like to say, Mr. Chair, if I could, that I believe Madame Vignola, and I have Mr. McCauley and Madame Vignola both who wish to intervene. But I think Madame Vignola was first.
Madame, please.
Eh bien, je comprends.
Okay, I understand. Is this better? I understand that currently we don't have that much time. I understand that Minister Anand has already appeared. However, currently, even if departments are trying to, they're supposed to talk to each other, I feel like everybody's acting in their own little silos, in their own world. And if we really want to have a report with recommendations that can allow for us to be prepared for the next pandemic, there will be a next pandemic, we should try to break down those silos, have ministers appear together. Of course, we have less time to ask questions. They'll be appearing yet again, but at the same time, we have to break down those walls in order to get complete answers. That was my comment on this issue.
Thank you for that. Paul, did you say we had anyone else on our speakers list?
Mr. McCauley.
Yeah, just quickly, maybe Minister Anand, we can bring her in with, I think the NDP has asked for Canada Post and Amazon. Maybe she can appear that one, and then PHAC can come back at the same time Minister Hajdu is here.
Well, of course, as a committee, as a committee, we can request any ministers and set our schedule as we see fit. Mr. McKinnon, I see you, and then I'm going to try and ring fence this in a little bit. But Mr. McKinnon, please go ahead.
I'm having trouble following the bouncing ball now. I mean, we first of all wanted the Minister of PSPC with Canada Post, with PHAC, and then it was Health, and now it's Canada Post.
Just suggestions, Steve.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I think we have a schedule. Raphael gave us a well thought out schedule. We've been over this several times now. It involves a comprehensive level of accountability from the entire spectrum of government departments. And what Madame Vignola calls silos, I call getting people doing their job. And I would just conclude in saying that people are doing their jobs right now, and repeated calls to testify before multiple, it must be said, not just this one, multiple parliamentary committees in a given week are hardly enabling the kind of work that I think Canadians expect. Madam Anand, I don't speak for her, but I certainly work with her, has shown herself to be more than available to this committee. She is scheduled in the current proposal that the analysts gave us. My submission, humbly, Mr. Chair, is that we stick to the program as outlined.
Thank you, Mr. McKinnon. My own comments basically are somewhat aligned with yours. Colleagues, it has certainly been my experience, and I think the experience of clerks and others, that ministers are very reluctant to appear with non-government witnesses. So a suggestion, I think it came from Mr. McCauley, that perhaps we schedule Minister Anand with representatives from Canada Post or Amazon. I just don't think that's in the cards. I doubt very much if the minister would accept such an invitation. So I'm inclined to agree with Steve that we have a work plan that has been suggested. I haven't heard anything suggesting that we radically change the work plan and schedule that Raphael has so carefully put together. My suggestion is we follow the work plan as proposed, and if there are any serious differences of opinion, or if there are additional witnesses that one committee member would like to see that has not been included in the work plan, to submit those to our clerk, and between our clerk and our analyst, I'm sure we can come up with some sort of an amended schedule. But my feeling right now, to try and, as I said, ring fence this and get moving forward, is that unless there's any serious objections, we just conclude this discussion and go forward with the work plan as proposed. Mr. Clerk, I don't see any other interventions, so I'll turn it back over to you.
If I may, Mr. Chair, the next meeting that we know of that's scheduled for the committee is Friday, May 29th. If we look at the next meeting that is in the proposed work plan that the analysts have put out, that would be the Parliamentary Budget Officer and the Auditor General's office. It could be if the committee may wish to adopt that now and then wait and see if other suggestions could come in from other MPs for future meetings that would allow the analyst to put out a revised work plan and allow the committee to continue updating what it wants to do. So this could be, I suggest this just as an option. If the committee wants to move forward, it may wish to adopt for the May 29th, but then leave provisions open for new suggestions to be made in the future.
Paul, thank you for that. I'm inclined to agree with you on that. And one other reason to support that is that we know now that the government has put forward a name for a permanent Auditor General. And I have not yet seen an order of reference referring that appointment to our committee or any committee. I don't know the process. I should, but I'm sorry I don't. So I would defer to Paul, because I would not like to see us just have a meeting with officials from the Auditor General if in fact the new Auditor General might be available. Paul?
First of all, Mr. Green raised his hand at the same time I did, so you may wish to hear from him.
No, you probably have. I was just going to say I'm on public accounts, and so I know that the wheels are in motion there, but you probably have better details.
I was going to say, yes, it was referred to the Public Accounts Committee. The Public Accounts Committee will be meeting on Tuesday to consider the person who has been nominated. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who's been nominated. However, the nomination of the Auditor General has to be approved after the committee considers it by both the House of Commons and the Senate. I could not give you a timeline as to how long that will take. What I would suggest is that we ask the interim Auditor General to come in the event that the new Auditor General has not been named. This would allow them to provide the information that they have for the committee without asking the new Auditor General to pronounce themselves on things that they may not be aware of because that work's been ongoing. I believe you're muted, Mr. Chair.
I should not. I should be unmuted now. Okay. I think what Paul has suggested is a very sensible way forward. And if we find that as we're getting closer to the end of this parliamentary calendar, this parliamentary session, that there still has not been an official appointment of an Auditor General, then we can, of course, invite, if we wish, officials from the interim Auditor General's office to appear before us. But what Paul has suggested, just so we're all on the same page, we continue with the work plan up until and including May 29th, that meeting of OGO. And before the conclusion of that meeting, we will have a discussion to determine meetings going forward and the witness lists as we go forward. In the interim, if anyone has any suggestions as to potential witnesses, I would ask you get them to our clerk, who can share them then with the analysts as quickly as possible. Does that make sense to everyone? All right, having said that, Paul, I don't know how we proceed, if we need a recorded vote to approve this or not.
Yes, the order adopted by the House that regulates our video conference meetings does require a recorded division. So my understanding is that the committee for the meeting on May 29th would like to invite those witnesses identified in meeting number 10 on the draft work plan circulated May 8th. And that, of course, would be the Parliamentary Budget Officer and representatives of the Auditor General's office. If that is, the proposition that you wish me to put, I can put that to the committee now, Mr. Chair.
I believe we see some concurrence for that, Paul, so why don't you go ahead with the recorded vote?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will start now. Monsieur Drouin.
You're on mute still, Francis.
Oui.
Yes. I get to vote 3 times?
Agreed.
Mr. Kuzmierczak.
Support.
Mr. McKinnon.
Oui.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. McKinnon.
Oui.
Yes.
C'est
Still
oui.
couldn't hear you, Steve.
Je vote oui.
I'm voting in favor.
Mr. Weiler.
Yes.
Mr. Abultayev.
Yes.
Ms. Block.
Yes, and Chair, I'm going to sign off now as I have another commitment.
Thank you. Have a safe weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Mr. McCauley.
Paul, as always, you're the voice of wisdom. Yes, thank you.
Madame Vignola.
Oui.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Also, yes.
It is adopted 10 yeas, 0 nays, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And we're a little over time, but I want to wish you all a very happy Victoria Day weekend, a long weekend. Hope it's healthy, safe. Stay with your loved ones, and we will see you back next Friday. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bonne fin de semaine à tous.